product into the market, irrespective of whether they're a SaaS product or an AI product, there's always like this white space of how do you start positioning the product and talking about the product. And this was specifically like a use case that I'm going to talk about is more when we were kind of launching this new product called, which is now called Super Agent. Back in the day, it was called Deep Sky. It was a kind of AI native space, and what people, the world at large, basically knew ChatGPT, and they somewhere kind of knew what Claude and Gemini, I think, like is kind of more of latter of last year, but like the initial part of the year was not really being talked about around Gemini. So I think there were these couple of tools that people really tinkered with. So for any new product entering the market, there's always a question of how do you position it, especially if it's a complex product. How do you make that simplified for people to understand not only what it is, but how it helps them and how they can use it. And then this hack is something that came up more in partnership with like a product marketing team. And I will say that if you're working with product marketers, they are gonna love you for this. We used to do a lot of testing, messaging testing, positioning testing to figure out how can we explain people what is Deep Sky, what do we do, like what is the product. And just for some context building right around here is basically a strategy co-pilot, if you will. People can use Super Agent for any kind of strategic work that they have, whether it's developing like a marketing campaign strategy, whether it's building a product roadmap strategy, doing TAM analysis for ABM. If you want to figure out a stock analysis, whether you buy, sell, hold, what do you want to do with it? So for financial analysts, corporate development, M&A, honestly, even job seekers, if you're searching for a job and you have an interview lined up and you want to know everything about the company, the competitive space, that's when you kind of use Super Agent as a product. But the kind of the underlayer of our product is deep research and deep thinking, which can be used in multiple ways. So there isn't only one use case or multiple use cases. And we struggle to figure out how do we take this product to market in a small ad space, which is like probably like 10 words at max with a CTA. How do you explain what this is? And at the time, I'll be candid, we didn't have capabilities for video ads as well. So it was more like a static ad with maybe some text overlay and copy, and then some supplementary tags that had to kind of really explain what we did. And so old trick, you should know what your competitors are doing, and you should know what are the different products and solutions out there that users are also going to reference, and how they're going to process that information in 3 seconds of a scroll on an Instagram ad or a Facebook, for example. And so what we used to do back in the day is you know your competitors, you go look them up, you try to go to their LinkedIn page, their company page, website, blogs, try to figure them out and figure out how they're talking about their product. But there wasn't really a good resource for marketers to truly understand what marketing speak was being put behind it, except unless someone manually went down and hunted webinars and things like that to pick up all the language and the words and the kind of phrases that were being used to try to help position and explain the product. But luckily for us, different advertising platforms like X, TikTok, Meta ads, Google ads, all of them have their own ads library, which means it's very easy for us to pull by location, by country. You can pull up a different competitor's names and kind of see all of the different ads that they have put out there in the platform. But that's where that library ends. You go look up a product name or a brand name, and then you can see a bunch of different ads. Some could be demand gen, some could be webinars, some could be case studies, and then you kind of try to put the whole piece together. But what you can do now, and something that we ended up doing, is we basically took a screenshots of a bunch of different ads of all of our competitors, which were both direct head-to-head competitors, but also kind of more tangential in the field to kind of understand the lay of the land or what solutions kind of existed. And then you feed that to, you can use AI of your choice. It doesn't really matter. This is such a simple task that ChatGPT, Claude, anyone can really do this, is you feed all of that in. And then if you have guardrails and if you have messaging frameworks and brand guidelines and tone of voice and what your brand stands for, you can add all of that into your AI, inject all of that and ask it to do pattern recognition to figure out how you can speak to your product and what's a differentiator. And sometimes you can make AI do the hard work. You can tell them that spot the pattern, spot what's being missed, look at feedback and reviews from Reddit and G2 reviews and any other review, Trustpilot, any other review platform out there. And then based on what customers are saying and what feedback there is, find the gap that there exists today in which way that brands may not be talking about similar solutions, and then give me copies and positioning, messaging that I can test across different platforms to get some signal in terms of how this is being used. And believe it or not, like when we first went to market and tested out our product, our phrasing used to be simple. I wouldn't say it was complex, but we would try to explain the technology that powered our tool to try to build the credibility of why this is not AI powered or AI assisted, but natively AI. And those who are building product around the world of AI, they will know that how these terms are so critical in brand equity, because you go to any SaaS product today, they're all AI powered. What does that mean? Is it automation? Is it a chatbot? It's to your own
Yeah.
imagination. But we struggle with it because our mandate was that we're a deeply technical product, and it's important to people, for common users, to understand the technology which is under the hood, to be able to actually leverage the platform. And I think that was one of the challenges we faced. So while we went to market with all of this wording to understand that how deeply technical we were actually missing something really simple. So when we did this whole thing of taking screenshots of different ads, we put it into, a ChatGPT is what I used at the time, in fact, did some pattern recognition, put my own prompt in there to figure out like how we could speak about our product. We got about 7 to 8 different messages that we could test out among the different target audiences that we were targeting. But the one that came, which was actually AI recommended, was really kind of trying to differentiate what is generic AI versus specialized AI. Because what it sounded like is our tool and product, which it is a far more specialized tool than a generic tool. Because generic tools are your ChatGPTs and Claudes and
Right.
Geminis of the world, where any simple to generic tasks, including complex tasks, can be done. But it's really the vertical AI products that go deep into the workflows of an accountant or a marketer or a sales leader or a business strategist or an M&A specialist. Those are the tools that are actually built on data that has years and hundreds of billions of worth of data that has been
Yeah.
kind of been models have been trained on, and the product has been custom built for those workflows.
Right.
And so I think differentiating that became a critical factor, and our winning messaging really was: generic LLMs give you X, super agent gives you Y, and this is why you should be using it. And across platforms, that was our winning kind of ad, highest engagement rates. And then that also kind of gave us really quickly like product market fit in terms of like what was resonating, but whom was resonating with, because we had a very horizontal product. And then you bring those users in, and then you solve for the next problem